I've been wearing one of these things, and if you're watching me on YouTube or markimmelman.com, it's a Woop. And I've been in touch with the folks over there, and this thing has changed my life. And so I decided that golfers around the globe, we need to get you in touch with these things if you don't have them already. And joining us today is Scott Haskell from Woop. And you can't see her, but she's listening in to make sure we're behaving ourselves. It's Melanie Pryor. Hey, Scott, welcome to our show, man. How are you doing?
Doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Look, I'm happy to have you because I travel a bunch with the PGA Tour. I think you're out there more than what I am, working alongside Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas and crowd. So I appreciate you making time for us.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be on and looking forward to a good conversation together.
Absolutely. Okay, let's put you into context. We have a global tribe. I'm sure folks have heard about Woop, but tell us about you. Tell us about who you are and how you came to be where you are right now.
Yeah, for sure. I am the senior marketing manager for our golf category here at Woop. So at Woop, our marketing team is structured where some of our biggest sports and biggest partnerships have a dedicated manager. And I'm lucky enough to have spent some time in the golf industry in my past career as well. And now been at Woop for about 2 years and helping them, grow and drive and lead our golf category and all of the work that we do with the PGA, LPGA tours and our different athletes that are out there playing every week.
Well, pray tell now, you've teased us. You've worked in the industry. First off, have you played golf or do you play golf? And then what else did you do before you joined Woop?
I do play golf. I watch a lot more golf than I play. Previously, I was with Adidas Golf out in Carlsbad, California. So Adidas TaylorMade for about 5 years out there. Came back here to the Northeast where I grew up, and it was perfect timing because Woop was just getting started with their work in the sport and beginning their partnership with the PGA Tour. So timing was great, and now I'm here with Woop and couldn't be happier.
Okay, to put the whole Woop thing into context, because look, for me, it's been a bit of a game changer into understanding rest and recovery and the value thereof. And that's why I wanted to bring you to our audience. But this whole thing started for me when there was the COVID-19 lockdown from the pandemic, right? And the PGA Tour was the first sport back, first sport to be broadcast. CBS, we were covering this thing. And I remember I was on the golf course on a Wednesday afternoon practice round, and I bumped into Nick Watney because all the PGA Tour guys had a Woop then. And I bumped into Nick, and he was looking not 100%. And so chit chat, how you doing, all the rest of it. Turns out later that evening he withdraws because he got some funky readings on his Woop, went to the doctor. Turns out it's COVID-19. So all of a sudden I was like, this is interesting. This is a great way for you to understand how the body works. And obviously it could, give a banner for an illness as well. So tell us about the product, just to give us the broad overview.
Yeah, definitely. That moment you mentioned was a very important one for us in the sport of golf, as well as for our company overall. So you're exactly right. At RBC Heritage 2020, one of kind of the early events as the PGA Tour was getting back and getting going, Nick Watney was a Woop member. He had used our product for a year or two prior to this event happening. And earlier that week, actually, he was signed up for Woop emails, and he had received, an email leading up to that event that talked about some of the research we had done around respiratory rate.
Right.
And respiratory rate was always something that was tracked by our device, but was something that wasn't necessarily communicated in our app. So after doing that research and finding that respiratory rate spikes can be linked to an early detector of COVID-19 because it's a respiratory tract infection.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Watney had read this article, and when he was at RBC Heritage, he had seen a similar spike in that metric of respiratory rate on the morning of the tournament. So even though he had already gone through the protocols of the testing in the PGA Tour and he was feeling completely fine, he had remembered that article, seen the concerning data within his Woop app, and went to voluntarily get a new test. Now, he was following all the rules of the tour and was, able to be in those designated areas and things like that. And then the test came back that he was actually positive, even though he didn't feel any symptoms, and he immediately removed himself and may have saved other players in that locker room from also getting sick when he didn't even know it. So that was a a really breakthrough moment for us that opened kind of our eyes and a lot of players on the PGA Tour that this could be a device that could help the PGA Tour remain safe and keep that bubble intact as they were navigating the pandemic. So that's really the following week is when a bunch of employees and our CEO went down to Travelers and worked with the PGA Tour to procure thousands of straps and get all players, caddies, and staff outfitted and keep that bubble safe. So that was really a big moment and a big break for us that kind of jump-started our very close partnership that we have with the tour and all the athletes out there.
Yeah. And for me personally, you know, that was an eye popper. And my first exposure to the Woop was because I was a former college coach, and there were a couple of boys on our team that they were into working out and stuff and just ended up getting it, just the strap with the monitor that would read. And I remember looking at this going, well, that's strange. It's not a watch. What's this thing? And they would just brag every day at workouts about how much they'd recovered and how much their strain was. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then the more I was out on the PGA Tour and the more I saw the players wearing these things, the more I started to realize, hold on, this is not just more of a COVID-19 alert system. This can really empower one to get the most out of your body. Am I right in my assumptions there?
Yeah, exactly right. Obviously, the respiratory rate research and around kind of the thick of the pandemic, COVID-19 was a big focus, but players had been using Woop for years before that on the tour, other elite athletes in other sports. And really, it's a great device that is going to measure those key pillars that you mentioned. It's going to look at strain, sleep, and recovery. And it's a 24/7 digital health and fitness coach, no watch, no screen, as you mentioned, that is constantly monitoring your physiological data in your body and what's happening and providing you insights, whether it's on general health, like navigating a pandemic, or somebody that's more regimented in, a dedicated and heavy training program that they might be following. It can really help you avoid injury, know when to push, when to make fitness gains, and help balance kind of the decisions and behaviors you make in your life to live a healthier lifestyle. Whether you're an elite athlete or a working professional, it can just teach you many things through those key metrics of strain, sleep, and recovery that will lead you to hopefully a more positive and healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, I work out some, I try and stay halfway in shape. And after getting all of this data, when I choose to look, I've got to be careful not to be trying to look at the stuff all the time and become beholden to it. But it occurred to me how many times I've worked out in the past when perhaps after a flight back from the West Coast or a red eye or a long distance trip or whatever, my body just wasn't in the place where I could really push myself very hard. And it turns out all that time I could have been doing damage instead of good. So let's get into the practicality of it. For the folks watching on YouTube who have not got a Woop or seen one, this is what it is. It's got a real nifty little band. I've got a few colors because I'm sartorial like that. And it's got a little reader on the back. And then you just clip it together and you wear it on your wrist and you get the data on your phone or your iPad or whatever. Talk to folks about the practicality of just wearing the Woop and how it functions, please.
Yeah, for sure. There's various different ways you can wear it. Like we said, there's no screen. It is meant to be passive and blend in so that you're able to check your app when the time is right for you, when you want that information, and not getting tons of updates and dings from your phone throughout the day that is going to be focusing you on that stuff. So it's totally passive. It can be worn in different ways. Really, the brains of the device is the sensors that will be the lights to monitor your physiological data underneath your body. But you can wear it, the two main areas are on the wrist or the bicep. So as you showed, you had the wristband as well, and that's where I wear it, right on the wrist. But you can also wear it on your bicep with a bit of a larger band. And we've also released Woop Body, which is a line of garments and apparel where you can actually take the brain of the device and insert it into a boxer short, a sports bra, or a pair of leggings to really be able to free your hands if you work with your hands or work in an industry that you can't have something on your wrist. We're always exploring new ways that you can wear the device. So we try to have it blend in. Also try to give you, if you do want to show it off, different colors and different styles that you can wear to match your outfit.
Matching my shirt and my gray strap right now. Yeah,
exactly. This is called the putting green band. This was a golf one we released this spring to celebrate kind of the spring season of golf. So yeah, there's many different ways to wear it, and we're always evolving how you can track your own data.
We'll get into the golfers a bit later in the conversation. And Rory wears it around the wrist, McIlroy that is. Justin Thomas wears it under the shirt on the bicep. So if ever golfers you're watching television and you see the guy follow through, or the lady on the LPGA, and you see maybe a glimpse of what looks like a band around the arm, that's the Woop.
Yeah, definitely. We have Jessica and Nelly Korda we work with on the LPGA tour as well. And you'll see both of them between the wrist and the bicep as well. So definitely keep an eye out. You'll see many players out there with it hiding under the sleeve or on their wrist.
Well, hopefully you'll see many on the Mark Tribe members and listeners wearing it soon too. Hey, I've got to ask this. The name Woop, does it originate somewhere? Or what was the genesis of this?
It does. So our CEO, Will, would be able to tell this story better than I, but our CEO, Will Ahmed, was a student at Harvard. Okay. And that's where the idea originally came. He played on the squash team there and was captain of the varsity squash team. So he was very interested in figuring out, throughout their training and their games, how, just more information, deeper understanding of people's bodies and why you feel good on some days and why you don't feel good on certain days, and uncovering research that maybe wasn't available at that time. So that's, 10 years ago at this point. But to get to your question, the members of his team, they had a saying where they would ask, how are you feeling today? Do you have Woop? Do you have your Woop today? So it kind of started as a slang term amongst the Harvard squash team, and then evolved into the name of the company today. Woop actually had a different name in the very beginning. It was called Bobo was the name of the company, and that was
bro. Woop is a lot cooler.
Yeah, definitely. Bobo was kind of the sound of the heart's beat. Bobo.
I got you.
So there was that, but Woop comes from a good kind of slang for meaning energy or recovery amongst the Harvard squash team from a decade ago.
Okay, let's get into what this thing does. And I've got it on, here's my phone. You can see the widget in the top of my home screen. It just gives you the basic stuff, strain, recovery, and such. And I mean, I could track what my heart rate is right now. And for me, when I'm out on course announcing golf, the adrenaline's going. It's amazing how you can see spikes in heart rates. And that's when it got me to thinking, for golfers, just walking around a golf course, how much exercise you actually get, because on a CBS broadcast, we do typically we show about 11 holes from 3 to 6 Eastern time. Then with the adrenaline of my show, I mean, I've seen strain numbers, and I'll let you explain what strain is, strain numbers of like upwards of 10 up to about 12 at times, just from walking about 10, 11 holes, calling some golf, the adrenaline's going, and strain is kind of the exertion level. So talk about, let's start with strain, and then we'll get into sleep and recovery.
Definitely, you're exactly right. So strain is a measure of cardiovascular load. So that is how hard your heart is working all throughout the day. As I mentioned, it's monitoring your heart rate 24/7 if you're wearing this properly at all times. So that's including workouts and strenuous activity, like you said, walking around a hilly course or terrain for 3 to 4 hours during a broadcast. But that's also all external factors. So, stressors in daily life, whether that's work related, life related, anything that can be causing your heart to speed up or slow down is being accounted for in that strain metric. So it's really a great metric of cardiovascular load, and how hard you're working is throughout the entire day. And then when you look at around on the golf course, obviously walking up hills can create quite a bit of strain, and strain is measured on a 0 to 21 scale. So we will see players sometimes at a stressful round on a Sunday that could be upward of 16, 17 strain on a day strain. And 3 to 4 of those strenuous hours, both physically and mentally, battling to win a championship on a Sunday. So strain's a great measure, and that's where sometimes when we get into, Woop Live on the TV that you may have seen, is trying to give a little bit of an insight to what a player is feeling or what that heart rate might be like in the true competition as they're building strain throughout the day, just like you are when you're announcing on the course and calling the action.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up and you referenced the stresses of it, because, a lot of the folks perhaps listening or watching this, they're on the golf cart and they play their holes on the weekend and stuff. But there's a life implication to this stuff too, for businessmen and women, whoever the case might be. Like now, for argument's sake, I have not worked out this morning or anything. I've had a couple interviews, and my strain thus far at about 12:30 Eastern is about 4. And because, I'm a bit jacked up because I got these interviews and stuff like that. So it's a great way for just overall well-being to see, man, I was highly stressed after that day. Perhaps it's time for me to, maybe go to sleep a little earlier tonight, or maybe lay off and the extra glass of red wine, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the most interesting thing about Woop is just how eye-opening it can be to, behaviors that we already have, whether that's, how much strain we're taking on, opening our eyes up to, things that we might not even deem as stressful to our heart and to our cardiovascular system. And just all the different things that once you start to open that in the morning and flip through strain, sleep, and recovery, that you'll see and notice and pick up on trends, and trying to just figure out how we can change and optimize those things. It's really interesting, all the different things that we learn about ourselves.
It's helped me to change lifestyle a little bit, because now pivoting to the sleep, I'm a guy, and I'll be honest, I enjoy a few glasses of wine in the evening. And it suddenly occurred to me what I thought like was good sleep or restful sleep wasn't, because of the sugar in the wine. So, I'll show you days when I've had maybe a couple, 3 glasses of wine where, even though I felt like I slept hard, the recovery was not so great and the sleep was broken. So talk a little bit about the sleep. And then afterwards, the cool feature that is available is in the morning time, when you get your sleep readings, there's a diary to say, well, I did have alcoholic beverages, or I didn't do this. And so you can start to figure out, what are the influences on how your body performs.
Yeah, definitely. The journal or diary, as you mentioned, is I think one of the coolest and most insightful parts of the app. So I'll touch on that. But first, to touch on sleep, you're exactly right. People wear this device, the Woop, to bed, and it's tracking you continuously throughout the night. So it's monitoring your stages of sleep, how much recovery sleep you're getting, which is REM and slow wave sleep. REM sleep for mental and cognitive repair to make sure you're sharp that following morning, and slow wave sleep for that musculoskeletal kind of repair from, any heavy workouts or any physical strain that you had taken on the prior day. So it's, tracking, telling you how much sleep you need based on what your physiological strain and recovery looks like from the prior day, giving you recommended bedtimes on when you should go to sleep, because we know sleep consistency is important, leading to the best recovery and performance the following day, is trying to be very consistent about when you go to bed and when you wake up, and making those around the same time or as close as possible. So sleep is tracked very accurately, and there's a lot of great insights you can get. I'll show you disturbances of, during the night, something as simple as turning over, or being, bothered by, maybe a sound in the house or something like that. So a lot of great stuff you can learn. And then, as you mentioned, the journal is my favorite thing. So we have a list, the Woop Journal, of over 100 different behaviors that you can select anywhere from just 1 or 2 questions all the way up to all 100 the following morning. And that's where you can answer very brief questions about behaviors and lifestyle decisions, everything from dietary habits to, drinking alcohol, to air travel, to all these different things that professional athletes or just regular individuals like ourselves would want to monitor. And then Woop is taking into account your answers to those questions. And at the end of each month, there is a monthly performance assessment, which I think is the most interesting part, because that's where it's actually digging into that data, telling you very concrete and insightful recommendations, such as when you travel and report air travel, your recovery is 3% less than your baseline. That's a made up number, but that's an example. They tell you something that when you report full hydration on a day, that your recovery is plus 7%. So that's really where you can see the physiological gains or kind of negative repercussions of these different decisions you're making each day, and see over the course of 30 days, what's positive and what's negative for your body.
Suffice to say, to turn this golfy for a while, especially for, we're all competitors, I guess, but especially the competitive golfers listening to or watching this, the value of consistent sleep and the circadian rhythm, if you will, and how much nutrition and what you put in your body. And you reference hydration. My goodness gracious me, when I'm low on water or hydration, you see it in the recovery numbers instantaneously.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's some concrete things that are maybe some of the main behaviors or pillars that we've heard amongst, feedback with athletes and really all individuals. I think you gotta, when we think about golf and specifically these players on the PGA and LPGA tours have a difficult lifestyle. They're traveling to events all over the country or sometimes internationally. Tournament rounds Thursday through Sunday, your travel day on Monday, and then right back to practice rounds and pro-ams on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So very challenging lifestyle. And as you mentioned, the competition is so stiff out there, any advantage they can get can be helpful. And that includes physiological advantages. So being fully recovered, tweaking a couple of these behaviors, in your bedtime routine, things like that can really be the difference of, maybe 1 or 2 strokes that sets you apart from hoisting a trophy at the end of an afternoon on Sunday, or maybe missing the cut. So some of those main things, as you mentioned, hydration, sleep timing is very important, cutting off food a certain period of time before sleeping so that your body's focusing on recovering rather than processing that food overnight.
Yeah.
Kind of just sleep environment is huge because as you know, there'll be early, late or late, early on Thursday, Fridays, and kind of that paradox, making sure that sleep consistency and bed timing is very important for some of these players. So all these things they are tracking and trying to get that advantage for, maybe 1 or 2 strokes that will set them apart on a Sunday afternoon.
To that, in both the strain and the sleep data parameters, there's a coach available. Like if you've said you want to get 8 hours worth of sleep, the coach will ask you when's your wake up time, and then it will start recommending, okay, it's time to start, switching off the lights and going and putting down the phone and going to sleep now.
Yeah, definitely. That's a new feature. So the 4.0 now has a haptic alarm in it. So you can set a couple different ways to be woken up or recommended when you go to sleep. So that's through the sleep coach. So it'll tell you each night when to start winding down and heading to bed based on kind of what that recovery and sleep need looks like. And then it will also, if you want to wake up in the morning now with the new haptic alarm, it can wake you up at a specific time, wake you up when you're in the green, or wake you up. I'll have to redo this part. I forget the third one.
No, it's fine. Well, look, I want to
wake
start
you up in different ways.
Well, that's tremendous. I don't mind getting blasted awake. My wife likes the soft ripple over the ocean or something like that. You talk about the green. Very simple measures. And when I look at my widget, low recovery is red, okay recovery is yellow, green is good. It's amazing how when you see this red, how it sort of shocks you into like, okay, well, I got to change my tune a little bit here and modify my behavior. And when you get the green, there's that sense of, okay, I can get after the day a little bit. Just those colors have got this strange sort of an effect on certainly my psyche.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that happens to everyone, right? Just simply the correlation between red, yellow, green, and positive, negative. And that's something we talk about pretty often with our players on the PGA and LPGA tour, because golf is such a mental sport too, right? Making sure that those players aren't, in the wrong mindset or psyched out or superstitious about their data when they wake up and it's not a green. Obviously, if it is a green, you have the highest ceiling, we should say, right? Your body has the highest potential to perform at a high level that day. And if you can be in the green on a championship Sunday, that's always preferred. But if you're in the yellow or the red, that's okay too. Yellow is pretty average most of the time. Red is not good for extended period of time, but that doesn't mean that you're going to shoot a high number on a red recovery. You may still shoot well, but as you mentioned, your behavior might be different. Your approach to your warm up that day might be different because you know that your body is a little bit tired from maybe a difficult Saturday round. So the red, yellow, green is a great system. Recovery is, I think, the most interesting and kind of proprietary thing about Woop, because it is so unique, that one single kind of recovery metric, which is great. And I think.
Well, I want to. Sorry to cut over. My man's bouncing around the place here, and people critique me for this, but I listen like a fan. Inside of the sleep numbers, And I know you've got graphics. If ever you just want to pop something up, go ahead. But inside the sleep numbers, it's broken down into, you've referenced the respiratory rate with Nick Watney. And that remains pretty consistent unless you're falling ill or something like that. And then there's an HRV number I want you to talk about. And then I'm just opening up my app here. And then, of course, you have the resting heart rate number. So here I'm looking at the trends. If you're looking on YouTube, that's my last few days. I've been home, so there's lots of green, relaxing. There's a recovery percentage average, the HRV, heart rate variability, resting heart rate, and respiratory rate. So please talk about the HRV and explain to the fans what that is.
Yeah, definitely. I'll pull up some data. This is an article we did ahead of last year's Ryder Cup, and actually shows some numbers here on some of the metrics that you mentioned around Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy. So This is kind of a combination of both. This isn't exactly what you would see on the screen, but looking at recovery, you're right. Resting heart rate and HRV are the two main kind of metrics that go into calculating a recovery score. So your resting heart rate is calculated while you're sleeping, and that's kind of your lowest heart rate when your body is most at rest and most recovering. Okay. So we don't have them on here, but we have in some of the other articles we've done talked about kind of the resting heart rates of these guys. And recently we did a interesting piece with the PGA Tour on Stuart Sink's resting heart rate as well.
And to this, I just want to say this real fast for the folks listening on audio. You can go to whoop.com and all of these cool articles there. And if you've got the Whoop, if you scroll through the app, you can find these articles and stuff. And as I'm looking at Rory McIlroy's numbers here, before a round of 8 under par 64 at the BMW, his HRV was 60, which is pretty good. I get 60 once in a while. And the recovery was 81%. And then Justin Thomas at the Northern Trust shoots 63. His sleep efficiency was 94%, which is high. And there were 3 hours and 11 minutes of REM sleep. Now, I've never, ever gotten that. I mean, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, definitely. These are a bit of outdated data, but it's interesting when we look at it. An outdated meaning just from last season. Yeah. Some of the trends we see are always the same. I mean, just recently, kind of some more recent data was JT just won the PGA Championship, right? And Rory had just come off a victory at the Canadian Open. So interesting trends there. We noticed in the data that we put out to media post those victories that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for both guys, both victories were all green recoveries.
Really?
So it shows you kind of the importance of them peaking throughout the week and managing that schedule between practice rounds and travel and pro-am and tournament rounds, and making sure that they peak for the weekend to try to give their bodies the best opportunity to be in the green and play their best when the trophy's on the line. So we see interesting trends, whether you're looking at last year's kind of Northern Trust and BMW like we're talking about now, or looking at more recent victories. And it's all personalized. You mentioned the 60 HRV there is higher than you usually see. So I think in that article we looked at, that was plus 7% higher than Rory's baseline. But that doesn't mean that you should be looking at yours in the same way. The nice thing about Whoop is that it is personalized to each individual. So it is not giving you recommendations based on the average person your age. It is taking your 30-day baseline based on your HRV, and your recoveries will be different. So just because you see Rory's in this article at a 60 doesn't mean that yours is better or worse based on that. It just means that each individual has their own baseline. And that's something that Whoop is taking into factor when it's calculating your personal recovery score on any given morning.
So to those HRVs, I want you to describe what it is, but here's mine over here. You can see that up and down graph. And over the last 7 days, it was 40, 56, 48, 64. The 40 and the 48, I'd had a few wines the night before. Then 59, 50, and 60 last night. HRV is a real nuanced thing. I mean, you can talk about the resting heart rate, and everyone knows what that is. What is HRV? What is that element?
For sure, it's difficult to understand and it's complex. HRV is heart rate variability. So what that is actually measuring is the time in between each heartbeat, which believe it or not, is not consistent each beat. It's not just, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. It may be, a 0.5, a 0.7, a 0.6. So that is varying in between. And that is, to dig in a little bit of science, HRV is a measure of how responsive your central nervous is to external stimuli, essentially.
Okay.
So your central nervous system is balancing the sympathetic and parasympathetic sides of the system, and essentially your essentially like neuromuscular, your spinal column is a pathway sending constant direction to the rest of your body, how to speed up or slow down to your heart, speed up or slow down and adapt to external stimuli. So HRV is a measure of that. And essentially the more fit or primed or ready to go your body is, the higher HRV will be. And that adaptation time to external stimuli from your heart will be able to speed up and slow down at a more efficient pace, I guess. So I guess in the terms of a golf tournament, higher recovery might allow you on a Sunday to deal with the pressure of the 72nd hole a bit better than a lower recovery, because your body is more adaptive to deal with the stress of that moment.
And a lower HRV number, from what I sort of feel personally, because you talk about, the body always working between parasympathetic and sympathetic, the fight or flight syndrome, right?
Exactly.
If you're highly stressed, then or not stressed, or your body's under stress because of eating late or whatever the case might be, my numbers always tend to drop. I mean, that's something I notice. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that number is taking into effect any type of external stimuli. So stress is certainly a big one, and that can affect us in a large way. That's not physical stress, that's mental stress, things happening in our lives, things that are on our mind. All of that affects our physiological data and our heart and the way we respond. So whether it's behaviors or stresses or whatever it is, that stuff can all certainly have a impactful effect on our bodies.
Tremendous. Okay, the final pillar is strain. And I want to go through these things because I think they're highly appropriate for when we talk about Rory and JT a little bit more. Strain is a measure of, the workload, I guess, you take during the day. And the cool thing about the strain is you can set activities like there's golf. You can punch in golf. When I walked, and it'll track, there's a GPS that tracks how far you've gone. I get on the Peloton bike. I check my heart rate when I'm doing that. It measures the strain, and all this number is kept. And then obviously at the end of the week, you can see an average of what the strain numbers is in like a bar graph over here. So talk a bit about that stuff for us, please.
Yeah, definitely. It'll track whether it's just your, heart rate going throughout the day in meetings or everyday life, or workouts and activities, as you mentioned. There's a whole list of any kind of different activity that you might do, whatever you would do for a physical workout, whether that's cycling or golf or CrossFit or, weightlifting, whatever that might be. All of those are in there, and you can track both an activity strain, which shows you in that 1 hour workout how strenuous that was, but then that's also factoring into your overall day strain, which shows you outside of just your workout, the other 23 hours, how grueling or intense has that day been on your body. So it will pick up both of those things.
You know what I find fascinating, Scott, and this is now I'm pivoting to the golf stuff, right? So let's say a golfer wants to go practice. There's certain days where I could practice for 30 minutes, essentially almost doing the same thing, where the strain numbers are variable, which to me was a bit mind-numbing at the time. But the more I spend time in this, the more I'm like, this is incredible. And knowing this stuff can empower us to work the correct amount so we don't push ourselves into fatigue, which for me as a golf coach is massive, because if some golfer's practicing fatigue and they're working on technique or whatever, the form is likely to wane, and then they're not necessarily going to be as productive as what they, and certainly me as the coach, would like.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a huge piece of how a lot of our professional athletes in many sports use our product, is to balance between strain and recovery, to make sure that they're not overtraining, to help work with their physios or training teams to build a plan that is making sure they're listening to their body and adapting that plan based on what the data might be that day. So that's certainly a main way that our athletes use it. And they'll even work together with their teams to build longer duration plans to make sure that their body or their training kind of regimen is having them peak around certain tournaments, around majors, and really planning their year out to make sure that they're balancing, focusing on injury prevention, and getting the most out of their workouts.
Right. Before we show that cool Rory video that you and I were both on hand for, and turns out that prior to recording this, folks. We might have been standing right next door to each other and didn't realize it, but that's beside the point. I want you, Scott, because you're in golf, you play golf, you're around elite golfers, you're looking at all this data. I want you to tell folks why wearing a Whoop is a good idea, because I think it's tremendous, because like I've mentioned about having directed practice, being well rested before a big day, watching sleep times, because golf in its own way is pretty strenuous. It's not like running a marathon or whatever, but it takes it out of one. And then if there's strain on the body, to me, that's when the mind doesn't operate as well as what it should. But I'd like you to put your take on that, please.
Definitely. I think, obviously I'm so focused on golf, so there's reasons I want it, just like I want the same clubs that these players have, is so hopefully it will help, me strike the ball like a PGA Tour pro. But in everyday life, I think there's plenty of uses for whether you're a professional athlete or, a regular working individual like ourselves. I think Whoop is great if you want to be your best self, whatever that is, each morning, simply to wake up feeling better, feeling ready to tackle your day and take on whatever might be in front of you that day, and achieve your goals as quickly as you can, whether that's in training and a sport that you might play, or whether that's simply getting your next promotion and doing great in your job and in your career and being sharp and on point for what you need to accomplish that day. I think what Whoop really does is gives you something that's unique in its insights and 24/7 monitoring that some competitor products can't do, and then teaches you with those insights how you can make changes and choices on your own, which are totally up to yourself to make yourself feel better or worse. So I think that's the coolest thing about Whoop, that it can really help anybody that simply just wants to feel better and perform better with whatever that might be on any given morning.
Yeah, the personalizing element of it all to me is fantastic. And then, just for playing golf, any golfer listening to this would likely agree that there are those moments of, I've often described golf as 90% pure panic and 10% pure pleasure. But what's going on is your body is going in and out of fight or flight all of the time. And when you're well rested, then that sympathetic nervous system, that's when you're operating there, and it's not the panic. And so when you're aware of what you've done and when you're well rested and such, you're better equipped to go out there and deal with the stresses of a competitive round, or a challenging day, or a big meeting in the office.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's something that can be measured, physiological data, right? And you can't improve on things that you can't measure, is something that we say sometimes here at Whoop. So simply having that information available to us gives us the tools to try to improve it. So you're exactly right.
Perfect. Okay. I'll tee it up and then I'll let you find the video while I'm doing so.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Seasons ago at the Wells Fargo Championship at Quail Hollow, Whoop is on television and you guys are showing the heart rates, and Rory is an ambassador and he was wearing this thing and he had a tee shot down the right hand side of 7 par 5 and the ball's hanging up in the rough. And I remember going to look at it, and Nick Felder was in the booth and he comes down to me and he goes, "So what's the lie like?" And I look at it and I'm like, well, it's sort of in the rough some, the ball's well below his feet with a big overhanging tree short right of the green and the water left. I would expect he pitches this out and then wedges it on there because it was a receptive hole location. Hopefully give himself a good look for a birdie. Well, he pulls out 7-iron or 6-iron or something and hits it from there over the water and the tree onto the back edge of the green. And I was like, my Lord, this is why I hold a microphone and this is why he is who he is. But what I was fascinated was the heart rate measure we were seeing on our monitor, which you guys were running, didn't perform what I felt like. So I want you to talk about that, please.
Yeah, for sure. I'll play the clip right here. This is a very memorable one for us because this was the first time that the live heart rate had debuted on NBC Golf Channel in a live tournament. So I'll play the clip that you mentioned so everyone can see it.
All right.
Let's see.
No, it's going. It's moving now, I see.
Are you seeing that all right?
No, it looks like the screen is frozen. Well, look, for the audio folks.
Cut this up, but this will work. All right, so I guess I'll restart. I have the clip right
there it
here.
is. No, it's going now. We're good.
This is actually the clip right here that Rory had posted.
He's got a monitor on right now, 104, 103 in that range, Nick.
He's got 7 iron in his hand. I would have figured that number might be slightly higher with the heart rate.
Yeah, I would have thought so. It's great to see this because he's not bugged by the shot, knew what he could do, trying to hit a low fade, didn't carry what he expected, obviously didn't carry, coming a downhill lie out that rough, it's tough to get it to carry the number you're looking for. So heart rate goes up now. He's thinking, now where is it? I have no idea. Is it in the...
So you can see in the clip there, it's a very special project to us because it was always a dream to get live heart rate into live competition and sports broadcasts. And that's something that we've expanded on this year with just recently the Giro d'Italia cycling race in Europe. And we had done it in some golf broadcasts last year, culminating at the Ryder Cup with the first tee. And kind of the whole idea of Woop Live is to give you a little bit of an insight into the athlete and what they're feeling. As you mentioned, that pressure moment for Rory there with a tough lie and trying to get it to the green and will win the Wells Fargo tournament.
Yeah. You heard me in there, and then you heard Felder talking about it. I was struck because looking at the numbers, when he was addressing the ball, the heart rate was sort of in sort of the 90 to 100 range-ish, right? And then after he's hit the shots, the heart rate actually went up to in the 120s when he's walking along. And Nick was like, well, I guess he's worried about where the ball is or where is it or whatever. I was fascinated that he was in the place where prior to hitting the shot, whether it breathing techniques, and if we had the chance, because Terry Gannon was the host and we were going to another shot, I would have said, well, to me, clearly, prior to hitting this thing, he's breathed properly. He's trying to rest his mind. He's lowering his system to be able to perform instead of getting in there when your mind's all over the show and your heart rate's soaring and stuff, and then you're just hitting and hoping. So the reaction and the movement of the heart rate was so telling to what he does mentally and emotionally pre-shot.
Yeah, definitely. And that's exactly it. It's these professionals at the highest level are so good at controlling their emotions or, going through breathing exercises to keep themselves calm in those moments. It's not uncommon to see a heart rate graph like we saw in that clip there, where sometimes, it's pretty calm through impact, but then maybe post when they're watching where it's going to land or walking to it, you begin to see that spike. And another interesting one that we did during the AFC Championship game last year, this wasn't live in the broadcast, but we looked at some of Patrick Mahomes' heart rate information from the AFC Championship game against the Buffalo Bills, and we put in unique article together, which is also on whoop.com in the locker section. But similarly, looking at Patrick's heart rate, he was actually calmer on the field when he had the ball in his hands and was in control of the situation than being on the sideline and spectating, maybe his defense having to stop the opponent. So the heart rate graph is always very interesting to look at when we, do these types of articles in marketing. And in that moment with Rory, it was pretty cool to see because that was the very first time that it appeared on TV.
One more thing, and I'll let you go. I'm so thankful for your time. I've learned with my Whoop, and then it occurred to me because when Bryson DeChambeau was going on his long drive binge, how he'd sort of hype himself up and take deep breaths and pump himself up as the pre-shot routine, and then he'd hit. And it occurred to me, I thought deep breathing, you take the deep breath in, is going to slow your heart. When you're breathing in, your heart rate goes up. And when you're breathing out, your heart rate starts going down. So for me, it taught me about proper breathing prior to the shot. And I feel like for golfers, even if they're just in practice, you can open this thing up on the activity, scroll left and get the heart rate measure. And if you want to work on calming down under pressure, you will see the influence of your breathing on your heart rate. And so as a result, you can slow your system. Am I crazy or am I right?
No, for sure. We have, certain coaches and trainers that have reached out to us that they've, experimented and done testing in the exact way that you just mentioned, working with their players or, their teammates, their clients, whoever it might be, to try to simulate those pressure situations and put in practice some of those breathing techniques. And Woop is a cool tool that you can pull up a live heart rate and at least try to train yourself for some of those situations. So I'm not an expert in, those techniques, because most of the time I'm not playing for anything that's too important out there, but they are certainly have a mastery of it and control their emotions very well when they're out there.
Hey, for all of us, no matter our level, our skill station in the game, every shot's important. Hey, tell the folks, Scott, where they can find a Woop if they don't have one, where they can go to get it, the website address, and then social media where they can follow you and follow Woop as well.
Yeah, definitely. Woop is our handle on all social media. So WHOOP, and our product's available at whoop.com. So there's lots of different colors and bands that you can purchase there to get started. We're a membership model. So the actual device costs $0 to get shipped to you. And then it's just choosing which membership length and plan is right for you. So everything's available on whoop.com.
Fantastic. I appreciate your time. And I'm appreciative of all you guys are doing. And more importantly, the research that you're sharing there on your website.
Definitely. Thanks for having us, Mark. And it was great chatting with you.